Everyone's debating Greenland's rare earths. 36 million tons, potentially the world's second-largest reserves after China. Media coverage saturated with analysis of critical minerals, clean energy transition, breaking China's monopoly on rare earth elements essential for electric vehicle batteries, wind turbines, permanent magnets, military equipment. Trump wants Greenland for the minerals, right? Economic security, resource independence, strategic materials for defense industries. 25 of the 34 minerals classified as critical raw materials by the European Commission exist in Greenland. The narrative makes perfect sense. America needs rare earths, China controls 69% of global production and 90% of processing. Greenland has massive untapped reserves, therefore America should acquire Greenland. Except Trump literally said on January 7, 2026, "We need Greenland for national security, not for minerals." The President of the United States just told you explicitly it's not about resources. Capital letters, emphasis added. So why is everyone still debating rare earths? Because the resource story is propaganda, an economically rational cover for what's actually happening. This is the story of how declining empires seize strategic geography while lying about resources. How Greenland fits a 3,000-year pattern of chokepoint control from Gibraltar to Singapore to Panama. Why the Arctic is becoming the new Suez Canal, and how understanding geographic denial versus resource extraction reveals exactly which phase of imperial competition we're in. Let's destroy the resource myth first, because it collapses under basic scrutiny. Mining executives who testified before Congress gave this assessment. Extracting Greenland's minerals would cost billions upon billions upon billions of dollars over decades with no guarantee of profitability. Anthony Marquez, chairman of Texas Mineral Resources Corporation, told Fortune, "If you're going to go to Greenland for its minerals, you're talking billions upon billions upon billions of dollars, an extremely long time before anything ever comes of it." Infrastructure doesn't exist. No roads connect towns. Citizens travel by helicopter, boat, and plane between settlements scattered along the western coast. Climate is Arctic harsh with temperatures reaching -50 degrees Fahrenheit, ice coverage over 81% of landmass. Greenland has exactly two active mines on the entire island, Nalunaq Gold Mine and White Mountain Anorthosite Mine. Neither extracts rare earths. Zero rare earth production despite decades of exploration. The Kvanefjeld Rare Earth Project, the largest and most promising, was halted in 2021 when Greenland's parliament banned uranium mining, and uranium appears as radioactive byproduct in the rare earth deposits. Denmark subsidizes Greenland at $12,500 per capita annually for 56,000 people, $600 million per year just covering basic services. America's comparable Pacific territories get $2,025 per capita, 6 times less. Matching Denmark's support while building mining infrastructure from zero would cost hundreds of billions before a single gram of rare earth is extracted. But here's the part that proves this is theater. Even if America seized Greenland tomorrow and mining became viable, those minerals would be shipped to China for processing, because China controls 90% of global rare earth processing capacity. The expertise, the chemical facilities, the environmental tolerance for toxic separation processes, all in China, built over 3 decades while America financialized. So America would spend hundreds of billions extracting ores only to ship them to China for processing, then buy back refined materials at markup. And here's the question nobody wants to answer. If Greenland's rare earths are so valuable, why isn't China there? China has scoured the globe for rare earth deposits for 30 years, invested everywhere from Africa to Australia, made deals with every government willing to sell. China desperately needs supply security. Yet China is not in Greenland despite opportunity and despite Greenland stating in 2025 that without Western investment, they would have to turn to other partners, including China. Why? Because even China thinks the economics are insane. The minerals are real, the extraction is fantasy. This is not about resources. Here's what it's actually about, and Trump told you: Golden Dome. That's the missile defense system the Pentagon is developing. Greenland provides geographic positioning for intercepting ICBMs launched from Russia toward North America. Thule Air Base, established in 1951, sits 750 miles north of the Arctic Circle. The base operates the ballistic missile early warning system, with phased array radar detecting missile launches from Russia thousands of miles away, providing critical minutes of warning. This isn't theoretical, it's 75 years of operational infrastructure that cannot be replicated because geography doesn't move. The base already exists, already operational. So why the push for full territorial control instead of the existing NATO agreement with Denmark? Because agreements can be revoked. Denmark controls access. If Denmark ends the agreement, or if Russia and China pressure Denmark through trade restrictions or economic coercion, America loses the position. If Greenland achieves independence, which they actively pursue, they control whether America keeps Thule. Treaties are negotiable. Geography isn't. When empires demand ownership of positions they previously accessed through agreements, you're watching the shift from confident expansion to defensive denial. But here's the part that reveals this is about chokepoints, not resources, and the pattern is 3,000 years old. 1713, Britain seized Gibraltar from Spain. The official story was protecting Mediterranean trade. The real reason, Gibraltar controls an 8-mile strait between the Mediterranean and Atlantic. Every ship passing between Europe and the Mediterranean had to transit that chokepoint. Britain didn't extract resources from Gibraltar. The rock is literally limestone with no mineral wealth. Britain extracted rent by controlling the chokepoint. Charge passage fees, deny military access to rivals, dictate Mediterranean trade. For 300 years, controlling Gibraltar meant controlling European maritime commerce. 1819, Britain took Singapore from the Dutch. Official story, trade outpost for the East India Company. Real reason, Singapore sits at the Malacca Strait where 60% of Asian maritime trade passes. Over 94,000 ships transit annually carrying 1/4 of global traded goods. Britain controlled the chokepoint, extracted port fees, denied passage to rivals. Singapore had no natural resources. The geographic position was priceless. 1882, Britain invaded Egypt, not for cotton or pyramids, for the Suez Canal opened in 1869. Before Suez, ships sailed around Africa adding 6,000 miles. After Suez, the route shortened by weeks. Controlling Egypt meant controlling the canal, extracting rent from every ship using the shortest route to Asia, denying rivals the ability to cut British access to India. 1903, America orchestrated Panamanian independence from Colombia. Official story, supporting democracy. Real reason, Colombia refused to grant canal zone control, so America supported rebellion and immediately signed a treaty giving control of a 10-mile zone. The canal opened in 1914. America extracted passage fees for 85 years until returning control in 1999. Notice the pattern. Empires don't seize chokepoints to extract resources from territory. They seize chokepoints to extract rent from everyone needing passage through geography that cannot be bypassed. Gibraltar, Singapore, Suez, Panama, none had resources worth extracting. All had geography worth controlling, and Greenland fits the exact pattern with higher stakes. The Northwest Passage, Arctic shipping route through Canadian archipelago and along Greenland's coasts, has been frozen and impassable for all of human history. European explorers died searching for it. Climate change is making it navigable. Arctic sea ice extent has declined 13% per decade since 1979. Ice-free summers could occur by 2040. When fully open, the Northwest Passage will reshape global shipping. Current route Shanghai to Rotterdam goes through Suez, 14,000 miles, 24 days. Northwest Passage, 9,000 miles, 14 days. 5,000 fewer miles, 10 days faster. Every day saved is millions in fuel costs and crew wages. Every container ship, tanker, bulk carrier will shift to the Arctic route. Conservative estimates project 40% of global maritime trade could shift to Arctic routes by 2050. At 12 billion tons annually, that's 4.8 billion tons transiting the Arctic. Trillions in annual trade flowing through a route closed for all civilization until now. And Greenland sits directly at the chokepoint. This is Suez-level strategic geography, actually more valuable because there's no alternative. Suez has the Cape route around Africa. The Northwest Passage has no alternative Arctic route. Control Greenland's waters, control who uses the passage, deny access to rivals. Extract port fees from commercial shipping. Position military assets to monitor all Arctic traffic. Geographic rent extraction, lasting centuries worth trillions. Russia has been building Arctic military bases for 15 years. Established Northern Fleet Joint Strategic Command in 2014. Built 13 airfields above the Arctic Circle. Deployed S-400 missiles and nuclear-capable bastion systems across Arctic territories. Putin explicitly stated Arctic control is national priority. China declared itself a near-Arctic state in 2018 despite being 1,000 miles from the Arctic, geographically absurd but strategically revealing. Launched Polar Silk Road policy positioning for Arctic shipping. Built 3 polar icebreakers with more planned. Made investments in Arctic projects across Iceland, Greenland, Russian infrastructure. Both empires are preparing for chokepoint opening. Trump's statement makes sense. If we don't do it, Russia or China will take over Greenland, and we're not going to have Russia or China as a neighbor. This isn't about mining Greenland. This is about denying Russia and China control of the Arctic chokepoint before it opens. And here's where the empire decline pattern becomes undeniable. Rising empires negotiate partnerships because they're confident in dominance. Declining empires demand territorial control and threaten force because they fear losing positions to competitors. Britain started with trade agreements in Gibraltar and Singapore when naval supremacy was unquestioned. Escalated to territorial seizure when French, Dutch, German competition intensified. Rome maintained allied relationships during Republic expansion when military superiority was overwhelming. Converted allies into provinces when Carthaginian and later Germanic threats emerged. Spain tried controlling every trade route simultaneously and bankrupted itself through military overextension defending too many chokepoints. The pattern repeats. When empires shift from cooperation to coercion for geography, when they stop trusting alliances and demand ownership, when they threaten allies to secure territory, you're watching defensive thinking replace offensive confidence. January 15, 2026, France, Germany, Sweden, Norway deployed troops to Greenland in solidarity with Denmark after Trump threatened military force. France sent forces with Macron promising more land, air, and maritime assets. Germany sent 13 personnel. Sweden and Norway sent troops for Operation Arctic Endurance. This is a NATO member threatening military action against another NATO member for strategic position. The alliance uniting 32 nations against Russia is fracturing because America no longer trusts agreements to guarantee access. Danish Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen met with Vice President Vance and Secretary Rubio on January 14. Called discussion frank but constructive, but stated fundamental disagreement persists and American demands are totally unacceptable. Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen warned American military action would end NATO. European leaders issued joint statement. Greenland belongs to its people. When empires cannibalize allies for chokepoints, when alliances fracture over geography, when coercion replaces cooperation, you're in late-stage competition preparing for great power conflict. This is the empire economy. Greenland's rare earths are economically irrational propaganda covering the real story. Declining American empire competing with rising Chinese and Russian empires for Arctic chokepoint control that will dominate 21st century trade and military positioning. The minerals would take decades and hundreds of billions to extract with processing still in China, strategically worthless. The geography controls shipping routes carrying trillions annually and positions missile defense between rivals, strategically priceless now. Gibraltar controlled Mediterranean access for 300 years. Singapore controlled Asian trade for 2 centuries. Suez controlled European Asian shipping for 150 years. Panama controlled interocean transit for 85 years. Greenland will control Arctic passage for centuries as climate permanently opens northern routes. The pattern is 3,000 years old. Empires seize chokepoints to extract geographic rent and deny rivals passage, not to mine resources. When they lie about resources to make seizure sound rational, when they threaten allies instead of negotiating, when they shift from cooperation to ownership demands, you're watching late-stage competition where geography becomes contested, alliances fracture, and declining empires prepare for conflict with rising challengers. The rare earths are the cover story. The chokepoint is the real story. And understanding the difference reveals exactly which empire phase we're in, and what comes next when empires fight over positions controlling global trade for the next century.